Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm Karen Seltz. I am your host, and I am here with a dear friend and colleague, Bonnie Chan. Hello, Bonnie.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we are a couple of women that have a ton of energy, so we'll see how this goes tonight. And we might tend to squirrel. So bear with us. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I want to introduce you to Bonnie. Bonnie is your go-to life coach and facilitator for amazing heart-centered women that are ready to dive into their passions and make a positive impact in the world. Her mission is to ignite that daily spark, guiding women to live the lives they truly crave and become shining role models for generations to come. Bonnie is also a certified NLP master, which I love NLP. We can talk about that. And she's an intenSati, easy for me to say, spiritual fitness leader. And if that's not enough, she's also a co-author of an Amazon bestseller and an author of something else with her husband. So welcome, Bonnie. I'm so excited that you're here, and let's just dive right in. So we're going to talk about igniting that personal growth spark at home. And I'm so curious how you came to be passionate about this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen, once again for bringing me on. And um, it really is, I've been in my own personal growth for the last, I'm going to say approximately 2 decades, right? Like 20 plus years. And many times around, I have had moments where I reflected to myself. It's like, oh, I wish I knew this. I wish I learned this when I was a younger person, when I was a teenager, when I was 10 years old. So it's like these lessons that I've been so blessed with. And I just wish that I knew these lessons and learned these lessons way earlier. And now, I have the opportunity to actually pass it down. So why wouldn't I?
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that's what
love that.
I.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. And I think about that all the time as a parent. Where would I be now if I had been parented the way I'm parenting? Not that I'm the best, but hopefully I'm doing better, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, like generationally, we're all doing better, right? Like up leveling. And it's almost like a duty. Like that's how I see it, right? It's a duty for us to like pass on all the things that we're learning and we're growing into, and also the evolution, right? Like we're all evolving in this year 2023, we are hopefully like wealthier than 50 years ago, right? Like medical innovation and just the world of technology has given access to the abundance that's out there, and it's more like an equal playing field. And I'm just so excited for that.
Yeah. It's really cool that you say all that. And I have this saying, like, we can either revolve, like keep living the same day over and over, keep getting smacked in the face with our lessons and not to doing anything with them, or we can evolve. And you were talking, about evolution, and I love that. So I'm so curious. I know that you and I have done leadership work together, it's pretty hardcore, and it's very, in my opinion, it's adult lessons. And I'm so curious how you take those and teach them to your family, to your sons, how you,
Mm,
make them child friendly, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I feel like a lot of the lessons I've learned over the years, one way that I've learned them is through stories, right? Through other people's stories, through stories in books, stories of real life stories of our mentors, right? Who we learn from. And I believe that for kids, adults, elder adults, like we all can learn from stories. So that's definitely one way, is through the practice of telling stories. And I love books. I'm a book fanatic. That's why I've authored. I mean, I was never like a writer. And when the opportunity presented itself, I'm like, okay, fine. I'll write about, because I have been blessed by so many magical lessons from books. And like, if I had something to share, why wouldn't I share it in a book, right? Like, I've been blessed with it. So right before our interview, I'm like, okay, Bonnie, you get to prepare, right? What are you going to talk about? And I actually went into my book, right, where I co-author in Ignite Your Parenting. I'm like, I'm going to read my chapter, and see what I said to the world, right? So I flipped it to our chapter. I'm going to show you my family. This is a few years ago.
Aww.
Lucas, my younger one, is now taller than me. So, my older one. My older one is taller than me. Jaden is almost my height. He's, every day he's like measuring, measuring. I have a feeling that they will both be past mama. And I read the very first line. My first line in the book says, my wish is to show you that simply looking at things from a different perspective, you can empower yourself and your family to learn, grow, and thrive. That's the first sentence. And I believe that just that in itself is personal growth. If we can see things from different perspective, compassion expands. Communication can be clarified, right? If we're not holding on being right, that in itself, one distinction of perspectives,
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah, that's amazing, Bonnie. I love that so much. And it's so simple and so profound. One line, just a change in perspective. And I study a book called A Course in Miracles, and they define a miracle as a change in perspective.
I didn't know that. Yeah. And just recently I heard this Indian, I think it's from India, a parable from India a couple of times in 1 week. So I was like, oh, maybe I can share this parable. So it's called, and some of you might have heard it before, it's called The Six Blind Men and the Elephant. So I've never told the parable before, so I'll give you my best version of it. So there's six blind men, and they've never seen, they're blind, right? They've never seen an elephant before, and they've never encountered an elephant before. And one day there was an opportunity where they got to meet the elephant. And, they all went up to the elephant. However, they had an opportunity to touch the elephant, but they were all in different positions of the elephant. So, one man was in the front by the trunk, and the other one was by the tail, and the other one was on one side, the other one was like holding the leg. And of course, like the one by the trunk is like, oh, an elephant is just like a snake, right? And then the one like with the trunk, the feet, the foot, is that what you call it? He's like, oh no, the elephant is like a tree, right? It's like strong as a tree, like sturdy as a tree. And then another man was like by the tusk, and he's like, no, it's a spear. An elephant is like a spear, right? And then another man was like by the big ears, and he's like, no, an elephant is like a big fan, right? So they were eventually like arguing what an elephant is like, right? And how often do we do that in life, right? Thinking like, no, I know it's this way. And then the other person's like, no, it's this way, right? So it's not just parenting, right? It's also with friends, with colleagues, with yourself, So I love that story, because that brings it back to this whole thing about perspective. Like, if we can just take on knowing that we all have a different perspective. We all have a different lens. And how can you look from a different angle to really connect and get the other person?
Ah, I love that. So, what characteristics would you say really support that, looking at things from a different lens?
The word is curiosity. Yeah, I love curiosity. I know, Karen, you and I are both really playful. We both love fun, right? And looking at 3 to 5 year olds, like I love that age, right? They're like so curious. They ask why, but it's not annoying. It's like super cute, right? It's not the 13-year-old who's like, why do I have to put away my phone, But they're like they're genuinely curious about everything,
Mm.
and they're just so excited, and they come from curiosity and just wanting to know more and learn more. So that's definitely a way of being I continue to practice, especially if I'm stuck with whatever.
Yeah, I love that. I love it too. And I do my best to teach that to my children. Like, well, I'm curious, what would happen if, or, just like giving them the language. And when I hear my older daughter talking to her friends and she says like the exact things I say, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's a mini me. A counselor of all of her friends. They all go to her for advice. And
Aw.
no, I believe you're acting like a victim. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't say that to people. But what you were talking about reminds me, I just saw this thing, I think it's on Instagram, and it was when they test children to see if they're geniuses, 98% of children under 5 test as geniuses.
Interesting.
It's their curiosity and the way they approach things. They don't have a fixed mindset, so they approach things from every different angle. And by
Yeah.
the time we're adults, it's down to 2%. It's completely flipped. Only
Mm,
2% of people are considered geniuses when they're adults. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they have the different ages, like the percentages at different ages. I'm like, and they're like in school, they're not taught to think. They're taught to memorize and to fit in, not
right.
any
Exactly.
waves. And
Exactly. I mean, I am seeing some shifts, right? So I am grateful to see shifts, or at least there are other thinking and influence, right? Bringing it into the school system and really like uh, doing our best, right? Like even us as parents, we have an influence.
yeah,
It's not just the teacher and the principal and the school's job to educate our
exactly.
generation, right? Like we're part of the team.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like,
We're part of the team.
right. So that's where I was going, is what can people do as parents or as members of the community to kind of like reignite this curiosity? And, in my experience, I see people being punished for making mistakes, which leads to risk averse behavior. Like nobody wants to take a risk if they're going to look stupid or be punished. And it happens in corporations, it happens everywhere. Well, not everywhere. It happens a lot of places. So what do you think, people could do as parents or as members of the community to
Yeah. I love that you're talking about the mistakes and failure. It's, again, going back to our own childhood, right? Like it wasn't something that I learned, right? It wasn't encouraged to make mistakes, or I didn't know what to do when I made a mistake, right? So I went into just thinking back, 7 to 10 years old, thinking back when I made mistakes, like I just felt shameful, and I felt bad and guilty, and I would hide things, right? I didn't know like how to communicate that I made a mistake, because it's like we don't want to get in trouble. So I think one of the best ways as adults, as conscious adults, and we're all still on this like growth journey, right? So some of us are, at certain levels, and it definitely starts with awareness, and it is role modeling. So role modeling the mistakes that we make on a daily basis, right? It's like, how can we speak out loud and actually share like what mistakes, like I often just say, oh my gosh, I made the like dumbest mistake, like I just really own it and like share about it with my spouse or my kids, right? And like process out loud, which is something I never had as a child, right? It's either, you get in trouble, or I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble, or like I'm gonna hide it. Yeah, and I don't know who to talk to. And usually I never talked about it, right? So it was stuck in my body. And Karen, I know you and I both know that then manifests into all sorts of physical diseases or whatever.
Yeah, it definitely can. Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. That's kind of how I've lived. So that makes me feel good because I've been a single parent since my kids were really little. And I always say, like, well, I don't have the luxury to hide what I'm going through. So they get to see it all. And they get to see that
Mhm.
all of it's normal. So they've seen me go through breakups and be really upset and crying and sad. And I normalized it. I'm like, this is part of life. It's not forever. Right now, I'm feeling sad. This will pass.
Mhm.
Pass in
Mhm.
5 minutes. I'll be happy again. Like, but it's cyclical. And I think it's really important to normalize that because I didn't see that a lot. Like my parents would fight and then next time I saw them, they'd be like, nothing ever happened. I never saw how things got resolved.
Mhm.
I think it was the generation, but it's
Right.
really interesting. I think it's really important to acknowledge our mistakes. And I've
Mhm.
seen that a lot in parenting too. If I've gotten upset with my kids, I always go back and clean it up. I'm like, you did not deserve to be yelled at. There's nothing you could possibly do to deserve to be yelled at. That
Mhm.
was 100% on me. And I'm really sorry and I'm going to do better. And
Yeah.
that's all I can do is like, so they've also experienced that, like me cleaning up things, which I think is like kind of what you're talking about, like acknowledging your mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are someone who never got that, right? Like it's like that feels weird. It feels strange to even say it, right? Like I feel like have never, and this is in live TV. I don't think my parents have ever ever apologized to me before. Right? So it's not normal and it's uncomfortable. And that's how we grow, right? Is being outside of the comfort zone. And um recently I was listening to, I know this is one of your big mentors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and how he talked about sometimes as human beings, we get addicted to these negative emotions. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally see that because it's comfortable. So I was working or talking with a client, and we were having this conversation. She's like, oh my gosh, I totally see that. Like the suffering was comfortable for her. So therefore, she's been choosing to suffer over and over and over again because that's what she knows and it's her safety net, right?
Yep, 100%. I talk a lot about that because, I follow him a lot. But it's like, anytime, whatever our programming was as children, that gets set almost like a thermostat. Like, how good can we take it? Well, if your childhood was bad, anything really good is going to be really uncomfortable. And that's where self sabotage comes in. And people have no idea they're doing it. They're like, why does this keep happening? Why do I keep creating this? And it's not your fault, it's your subconscious programming. You just
Mhm.
need to bring that stuff up to the surface and expand your comfort zone. So when you become aware that, okay, I've been resisting being happy, a lot of people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. They explain it that way. Like, okay, oh, something good happened. Okay, now something bad's going to happen. And they actually create it with,
Right.
with their thoughts and intentions.
Yeah, exactly. They like look for it to
Yeah.
get back into that comfort zone, right?
Yeah. And definitely what we focus on expands. So if you're looking for something to go wrong, you will find it. Of course you will. And if you're looking for things to go right, you're going to find those too. So that's like part of my coaching always, no matter who I'm coaching or what, is to start bringing up to their awareness what they no longer want to experience. What are the behaviors? What are those thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
What are those beliefs you no longer want to believe? And then, looking at I mean, we can go deep on that. We don't have to, but what would you rather experience?
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
focusing on that. So you're telling your subconscious mind, okay, don't let me go unconscious when I start to do this thing or believe this or say this to myself, because that's part of it. It's like you're bringing that stuff up to your level of consciousness. But then the other part is, okay, now when I do experience somebody being loving to me or kind, or uh, when I do experience abundance, for example, let me notice it, because before it was happening and you just weren't noticing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I want my children and their friends to learn, right? As early as possible, is to look for the good, be a source, the source for kindness and love and generosity. And they, they're now, my kids are, one's almost 10, one's 13, right? They have a lot of power with their peers. So we all influence each other. So how can, the question is, how can we support our loved ones, right? Whether they are I see that my mother-in-law is in the live audience. So whether it's my mother-in-law or it's my nephew or my niece, or somebody else's, or Karen's cousin, right? We all have our, again, I'm going to go back to that word duty. I feel like it's our duty. When we know better, we can do better.
Yeah. I want to be a junior high, middle school boy and say, you said duty.
You're funny.
I had to do it. You lobbed me one. I mean, come on. But I agree, like, especially when we know. And as you were talking, I just kept picturing like this ripple effect. And you don't know what someone else is going through and how much your love and warmth and kindness and compassion can influence them and everyone they come into contact with. So it's beautiful that you're teaching your sons at such a young age and they get to be that ripple effect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sometimes, certain things I say, it seems like they're just like, that's weird, mom, and I know that it does sink in, because 2 years later, like, they'll come up with this line. I'm like, wow, you actually remember that.
Well, they're watching everything we do and they're listening to everything and they're seeing, does that match? And
Yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
times it doesn't match up for people, and the kids are going to do what you do, not what you say.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to bring awareness, like, especially, when we mess up, we're like, okay, that was not, I did not act according to my values. Like for me, I've always made it a point to not yell at my kids and to not be disappointed in them, because I read this book a long time ago called Real Love in Parenting. And it said, anytime you express anger or disappointment to your children, all they hear is, I don't love you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never want my children to feel like they're not loved,
Mm-hmm.
not lovable, or like they're defective. And those are the ways I grew up believing about myself. I really believed there was something seriously wrong with me, that my own parents couldn't even love me.
Mm-hmm.
I carried that for a really long time, and it colored all my decisions, everything. And
Yeah.
it took a lot of work to get to the point where I'm like, oh, it's not really true. And yeah, I knew that in my head, but you know what I mean? It takes a lot of work to get that stuff out of the
Oh,
system.
totally. I mean, one of the lessons or distinctions that I wish I learned earlier, and I want to instill with our next generation, is the power of forgiveness,
Mm.
right? Like what you were saying, you were doing your best not to yell, and as parents, sometimes it just comes out, right? It comes out. You get triggered. It probably is not, the root of it is probably not your child that triggered you. It's probably something like deeper that came out, and you blow up. You were totally, because I've been in those moments where afterwards I feel bad, guilty, shameful, all of it, right? And tears come down.
Yeah.
This is like, I remember a few years ago when my kids were younger. One day, whatever happened, I just blew up, right? And I felt horrible, 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 horrible. And I'm grateful that I have many friends to call, because that's the first thing I did. I went for a walk to like release it, release my own judgment of myself. And then I called a friend, right, to process it out loud. And then that's when I could bring myself to even then get to forgiveness for myself, and then communicate it back to whoever it is, right? Like my son, to apologize, take ownership, and really like complete that interaction, right? Because it was not him at all, it was me. And again, there's trauma is from generation, collective trauma, and just our own experiences, right? That whole elephant story, it's like a built up sometimes.
Yeah, it's really brilliant that you shared the whole cycle, because I think some people that are going to apologize, they do it when they're still in that heightened state. They haven't processed it yet. And then it's not genuine. And kids feel your emotions. That hasn't been trained out of them yet. They can feel everything. So they know if you mean it or not. They just inherently know. And I share this a lot. I love this Einstein quote: you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it, which means if you're in the problem, you must do something. And the two things that you talked about, like going for a walk, like moving the body, is one of the quickest ways to shift it. And then calling somebody that can witness you, that can hold space for you, process with. Those are the two things I do all the time. It's brilliant and it works. And then because I do have the racket of I need to be right, and like sometimes I'm like, I just yelled at my kid and I know I'm right. I'm like, well, duh, no, you're not. Like, of course you're not. But the other thing that I wanted to say is I think it's really important to know the wounds that get triggered, because for me in parenting, when I lose it, it's not being respected. How dare you not respect me? I'm like, and I just like become this other person when that gets hit. It's like this nerve gets hit. So I think it's really important to notice, like when you do get triggered, okay, what is the story behind it? What is the belief? Like,
Right.
you're
Exactly.
my child, you better respect me. That's like the thing. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I am grateful for all the growth that I've been evolving into, and I'm grateful that my kids actually embrace a lot of it already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Well, I could talk to you all night about this. And I want to make sure that you came up with something that I think is so brilliant, because I think, when I go to restaurants and I see families looking at their cell phones, I'm like, what is happening? Are you doing that at home too? Like, it drives me bananas. I cannot believe that. So we have always had a no cell phone at the table rule. I mean,
Mm,
it's just, but anyways, you came up with this brilliant thing. So I
yes,
love you to
yes,
share
yes,
that,
yes.
and you're offering it for free.
Yeah. So for those of you who are proactively bringing personal growth to your families, something fun that I like fun, right? Fun and playful. And I like to create games around bringing personal development into the household. We created a guide on unlocking the magic of family dinners. I'm going to just share screen quickly so you can see it. This is what it looks like. Can you see, Karen?
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
amazing, amazing. So this is a free guide in showing you like the importance and also a few tips and how to have a great dinner conversation. And I created a bingo sheet. Like we literally have been playing family conversation bingo daily at our dinner table. And it's been really great. The kids are participating. We've had a little bit of conflict the other day because one of the bingo items is played two truths and a lie. And they're like, Mom, that's a lie. And I'm like, no, it's not. Right? But it brings like a new dynamic of a conversation to the table. So this is our free gift to all of you who are watching right now. And as a replay, you go to mythrivingfamily.com/family dinner guide. So mythrivingfamily.com/family dinner guide.
Wait, didn't you just change it and make it easy?
Oh yeah, I did. Because Karen's like,
Bonnie Chan .link.dinner. No, Bonnie Chan, BONNIE Chan .link/dinner magic.
Thank you so much.
Chan.link/dinner magic. Because we were talking before the show, she's like, I'm going to shorten that and make it easier.
I think people have gotten it. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. Is there any last words you wanted to share with our audience before we wrap up?
My invitation to all of you is to always start from within. So if you're feeling someone is triggering you because of lack of love or appreciation, like look within. It's like, when's the last time you love yourself? When's the last time you appreciated yourself? When is the last time you took yourself out for a date? Right? So I love to leave that with you, and then download our bingo sheet and play bingo.
And if somebody wants to connect with you personally, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, my social media handle is at Coach with Bonnie. So LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, it's all at Coach with Bonnie.
Oh, that makes it easy. I wish I had thought of that. Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Bonnie. And thank you, everybody, for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm Karen Seltz. I'll see you right here next week. Bye.
Thank you so much, Karen. Bye.